Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I hope everyone's been having a great week out there so far. There is a lot of information to feed you guys in this morning's video. And the first thing we'll speak on is today's increased severe weather threat across areas of the southeast. And we'll break this down state by state, section by section, and get very detailed. We'll speak on the structure, the timing of these storms. We'll talk about ingredients and all of that. And then we'll speak on the threat of severe weather for southern areas of Texas. And then we'll speak on the rest of the country because there could be some unsettled weather elsewhere also, like in portions of the Northeast. So we'll talk on that, and then we'll switch gears and speak on the days to come. I do think a very unsettled and active pattern will be in place over the next several days, all the way into maybe the middle portion of next week for areas of the eastern U.S. So we'll speak on what's driving that, get very detailed and all that. And then we'll speak a little bit at the very end of the video on a Bible devotion, reading scripture for you folks. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is what's going on right now. We have some rain, some storm activity across areas of the Midwest, specifically Missouri and Illinois. A little bit of rain activity across Kentucky, a little bit of action here in southern areas of lower Michigan. And we are getting some downpour activity in like South Carolina and surrounding states. A little bit of action going on in southwestern Texas, but all in all, no active weather alerts ongoing right at this second as of around 6:45 a.m. Eastern time. So this is current conditions. Now, let's speak on what can unfold across the southeast later on this morning into the afternoon and eventually even the overnight hours for certain areas. So this is the latest update per the Storm Prediction Center that we have. We have a slight risk across the southern apps, middle, eastern Tennessee, southeastern Kentucky, western areas of the Carolinas, northern Georgia, northern Alabama, a very small section of northeast Mississippi, and this does extend all the way into southwest VA and the extreme southern portions of West Virginia. Includes cities like Asheville, might as well include Charlotte in this, just north of Atlanta, just north of Birmingham, does include the Huntsville, Florence, getting into Chattanooga, Nashville, Knoxville, and all these areas. Marginal risk extends around that. There's going to be severe weather in those areas also, level 1 out of 5 in the dark green. This goes all the way down to Melbourne, Florida, all the way up to Washington, D.C., all the way over to the boot of Missouri, and all the way down southwest to like southeastern portions of Louisiana. So what's driving this? Level 2 out of 5. There is a tornado risk. Just like with any severe weather threat, even if it doesn't even show up as a 2% risk, you can still get tornadoes. We know that. But in the green area, 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. But the biggest threat today is wind and especially hail. So in the yellow area, we have a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. And I do think we're going to get some very strong wind gusts with some of these clusters of storms. And that's going to be the big word for today, clusters. There's just going to be literally just little areas and clusters of storms out there. And it's going to be hard to figure out exactly where they go. But I will give you my opinion on a couple areas where I really think they'll hit for today. But the hail threat, not only in the yellow, do you have that 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger, and the black outline region, which includes the Tri-Cities areas, all the way up into southwestern areas of Virginia, western North Carolina, all the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, all the way into the mountains of and just northern sections of Georgia, and a very small section of northeast Alabama, and it does include portions of middle Tennessee like the Cumberland Plateau. In this black outline area, which is where I was getting at, black dashes, 10% risk of significant hail, which is 2 inch in diameter or larger. So you could have a wind-driven hail threat in this area for today. So this is definitely upticked. The ingredients have, I would say, risen a little bit further north than what we were expecting, say, maybe a couple days ago, and we'll speak on that here in a few minutes. But let's break it down state by state. Let's talk about Kentucky and Tennessee first. So this is starting off around 10 a.m. This is in Central Time. Time frames up here, and we're going to cover mainly Kentucky and Tennessee, but it'll show like the boot of Missouri, Southern Illinois, and Indiana, and Ohio in this too. So we start to get to about midday. Some thunderstorms do begin to form in southern areas of Illinois, even a little pop-up activity in areas in Kentucky. Tennessee looks pretty quiet. But then shortly after 2 p.m. early afternoon time frame, we begin to get some thunderstorms. And listen, there could be some tornado warnings with some of these storms along maybe a boundary or something setting up in Kentucky. But you see how this kind of has that hook, that kind of sideways kidney bean look, if you will, in eastern areas of Kentucky. You got to watch out for these. And then look at these storms developing in western Tennessee. These could really cluster up, and eventually somewhat of a like semi-discrete mode will turn into more of just a clustering mode, if you will. So at this point, it's 4 p.m. They're everywhere, right? I mean, we got storms as far north as southern Indiana, heck, even up here in Illinois. But look at these storms starting to become widespread in western areas of Kentucky, northwestern Tennessee. And, you know, the more you start to see these splotches of purple and pink, the more intense these storms are depicted by this run of the HRRR model. But we have a rotating thunderstorm over here showing up. See the little circle thing right here? If you live in like Hazard, just eastern areas. I know the hill country of eastern Kentucky, be aware of these. And then we start to get to about 6 p.m. Notice we're starting to get some sort of clustering of storms here in Middle Tennessee. So Nashville could begin to get hit by some nasty storms near Cookeville also. We got this storm near Knoxville. We got some storms still cruising through sort of western to central Kentucky at this point. And then we get into 8 p.m. This is what I want to watch. I think some sort of line of storms, maybe an MCS, what we call a mesoscale convective system, could develop along the Cumberland Plateau into central Kentucky later this evening. And with it, you'll have an increased wind threat. There'll be the embedded risk of tornadoes and then large hail. So I really think we're going to get just this nasty area of thunderstorms that begins to cruise sort of across eastern Tennessee, maybe southeastern Kentucky throughout the late evening hours. And, you know, by the time this reaches the mountains, it could be late evening, like 10, 11, midnight tonight. And then a lot of this starts to get into North Carolina. But really the mode here, right after lunchtime, everything starts popping up. These storms will be quite intense. And I really think some sort of clustering will occur of storms kind of in this region right here. This is 8 p.m. So it'll be tough to figure out exactly where these storms form. It's kind of a combination between like a spring type setup and a summer type setup, in a sense where spring there's more flow, but summer, like, it's very tough to figure out where these are going to really develop right off the dot. So Mississippi, Alabama, all right, we take it to about lunchtime, not a whole lot going on. About middle of the afternoon, it's around 4 p.m. Could get some thunderstorms popping up in the panhandle of Florida. These could be strong to severe. And then we get to about 7 p.m. This is where we start to get the pop-up thunderstorms, and really in the northern half of Alabama and Mississippi. We get to 9 p.m., 10 p.m., nothing too crazy, 11 p.m., midnight. All in all, guys, it doesn't look too bad in this area. We could have a big round of heavy rain and storm activity that begins to emerge onshore on the Alabama, Mississippi, Panhandle, Florida coastline. But, model guidance isn't always going to be perfect with this. So I would watch out around 4 to 5 p.m. onward. Tupelo, Greenville, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Meridian, Jackson, Gadsden, Huntsville, Florence, up here near Memphis also, points north and just around this area for some strong to severe thunderstorms. They might not be widespread in coverage, but they very well could be. This model is not going to be perfect. Now, if we're talking about Georgia and South Carolina, now, I really think one thing I'll tell you is we got some heavy rain and a little bit of storm activity in sort of the western Midlands of South Carolina this morning. Could actually bring some rain to my house. I live here in the Lexington, Columbia area here in central South Carolina. But anyways, early afternoon, could get some thunderstorm activity in central South Carolina. We'll see if that happens. Maybe some storms in, eastern areas of the state of South Carolina. And then we start to get to about 7 p.m. There's not a whole lot going on. And guys, I can honestly see us being fine throughout the afternoon in Georgia and South Carolina. But I could also see us getting some thunderstorms. We got some storms forming down here in southern Georgia, near the Florida-Georgia line. And then we start to get to about 9 p.m. We're getting a lot more storm coverage down here in southern Georgia than really anywhere else in Georgia and South Carolina. And then I want to watch as we get into 11 p.m., some more thunderstorm activity still ongoing. But watch what happens kind of up here in this region. So this is midnight. This is 1 a.m. Widespread thunderstorms begin to develop in the middle of the night. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. So I really think we'll have a severe weather threat later tonight in areas of eastern Georgia, and I think eventually all of South Carolina. This is 2 a.m., this is 3 a.m. We got widespread thunderstorm activity across the state of South Carolina, especially right over central sections, the Midlands of South Carolina. We got some storms trailing off closer to Myrtle Beach, Florence. And so if you like a rainy, stormy night, it could definitely be your night tonight. And this is right on top of my house. So I really don't think it really gets active until later this evening in the Carolinas and Georgia. Well, South Carolina and Georgia until later at night. And you do see how some of these storms are, showing some circles off of them, which indicates maybe some rotating stronger updrafts. So waking up to a bit of a tornado risk across areas of eastern South Carolina tomorrow. And I wouldn't rule it out. And I do want to skip a little bit ahead into tomorrow afternoon just for my viewing. Nothing too crazy to see there. But I do want to show you Florida. We've gotten some powerful thunderstorms this week. I do think more widespread rain's on the way, but this is around 4 p.m. Could have an isolated strong to severe storm up here in the Panhandle of Florida, northern Florida. Look at these sort of east of Gainesville, south of Jacksonville, maybe St. Augustine, down Daytona Beach. We got some isolated strong storms maybe popping up in central Florida. And then they'll kind of cluster up and just sort of dance around in central Florida, especially the eastern sections of Florida. We really need to rain, Tampa, along the west coast of Florida. But I'm not sure if we're going to get it today. This is 9 p.m., this is 10 p.m., this is 11, and most of it stays in the central peninsula into the eastern sections, east coast of Florida. But I do think your time is coming for other areas of Florida. I know that's been the general theme of the last few days. Storms are mainly staying on the eastern side. I do think that could change here in the next several days. But the last area we'll zoom into is Virginia and North Carolina. Now, this is another area I'm watching. So this is around 5 p.m. This is when I really think our eyes need to be to the sky here. All right, I do think we need to watch for a clustering of storms coming off the mountains in the foothills of North Carolina. Some storms up here in Virginia too. So already around 6 p.m., some nasty storms could be present here in Asheville to Hickory, to Statesville. We got some strong to severe storms potentially here in southwest Virginia. And then I just want to watch for this complex of storms right here. This is 7 p.m. This could be hitting Winston-Salem pretty hard, Hickory down to Charlotte. This could be extended a little bit further south than what this is showing, maybe down to Rock Hill, but Roanoke down to Charlotte. There's going to be some sort of nasty cluster of storms that could produce very high winds, strong winds, a tornado risk, and very large hail with these. And I would just watch out for these. Don't let them catch you off guard. They'll be around dinner time tonight, maybe a little bit after. And then these storms will eventually try to make it all the way to Raleigh later in the evening. And we're going to get just more thunderstorm development ongoing here in Hickory, Charlotte, Roanoke, Danville. Could get some thunderstorms all as far north as Washington, D.C. later tonight. And this is like midnight. A lot of storm activity in North Carolina. More so heavy rain, maybe clusters of storms up here in Virginia. And then we could get another round of storms that crosses over the mountains of North Carolina later tonight. This is 3 a.m., 4 a.m. So definitely very active. Starting around 5 p.m. tonight, well, this afternoon, onward throughout the overnight hours across North Carolina especially, but Virginia also. But I found like in Asheville to Hickory to Charlotte, Statesville, Winston-Salem to Greensboro, I'd really watch 3 to 4 p.m. onward. This area right here, you guys need to pay attention to this for later this afternoon into the evening hours. These storms could pack a punch, I'm telling you. But moving forward, what's driving this? Well, this is starting off this morning. These are dew points. You know that these storms love moist air, and dew points is the gauge of how much moisture is in the atmosphere. So dew points in the 60s and 70s. The storms love it. So we got this plume of very moist air getting all the way up into Kentucky. Now, I think it'll be more moist than this. I think dew points will be deeper into the 60s. HRRR model can really have a mixing bias, meaning that it mixes a lot of dry air that really isn't there. But we basically are getting this plume of moist air all the way up into Kentucky, even southern areas of Indiana and Illinois. And that will be the moisture factor to these storms. Now, if you look down here tonight in like South Carolina, look how these dew points rise deep into the 60s, maybe even to the low 70s in certain areas. So this rise in moisture will, of course, spike the CAPE levels. So we'll get CAPE levels, mixed layer CAPE, over 1,000 joules per kilogram, 1,500 in some cases. So we get this big plume of storm energy that's rising right over this severe weather risk area. So, of course, we got the thermodynamics in place. What about kinematics? Do we have the flow in the atmosphere? Absolutely. A nice 500 millibar punch of flow aloft. So winds at about 18,000 feet, going from west to east at about 40 to 50 knots. So this is enough kind of push in the atmosphere to get these storms going west to east in kind of a clustering fashion, if you will. So there's enough of an impulse of upper level flow to get these storms going. So you basically got overlapping ingredients that support severe weather, which is why you've had the uptick of severe weather for today. Now, looking at the updraft velocity swath, it indicates these, where these maybe more intense clusters could happen. I would say that, this area could be more so for this afternoon into this evening. This could be more so for this evening. And then maybe this stuff in South Carolina could be maybe more so overnight tonight. But we are going to get some intense storms with this. And if we're looking at, I don't always like showing this. The more time goes by, the more I don't like showing it, just because I don't think it's very accurate. But this is max wind gusts based off the 06Z run of the HRRR model. And that's what I want to actually zoom into this a little bit. First off, you do see Tennessee. You see these little splotches of green. This is in 1 hour increments. That's why it jumps certain areas. This is 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts. But I do want to zoom into North Carolina and South Carolina. You see this area. I'm going to get actually even a little bit closer. You see this area right in here in North Carolina? That's for what could happen later on this afternoon to this evening. I'm telling you, there's going to be some wind damage with some of these storms in the Piedmont, North Carolina, maybe all the way into the Triad, and this could happen later tonight. So I'm just be aware of this. I think winds, honestly, I could see an uptrend to an enhanced risk for winds maybe in North Carolina. But I don't anticipate that, but I could see it happening. I wouldn't be surprised is what I'm trying to say. So that's an update on the severe weather threat for today. Now let's speak a little bit on Texas. There is a slight level 2 out of 5 risk along the Texas-Mexico border. Marginal risk goes a little bit more into Texas and the San Antonio, but I don't want to ignore this area. 2% risk of a tornado down here in southern areas of Texas. Wind threat, there is a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And there is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And starting around mid-morning, we could already have a clustering of storms developing down here near Alpine. This is getting into 1 p.m. San Angelo points south. You see these storms kind of moving in general from northwest to southeast across the border. So basically nasty storms into Mexico and then into Texas across this area. And then we're getting into the late afternoon hours, and a lot of this action begins to trail off deeper into Texas. And here it comes. It'll connect down here. And first off, we have some storms bubbling up down here deep in Texas. These could produce some very large hail, some gusty winds, and there could be some isolated tornadoes if you live well south of San Antonio. And then at the same time, we'll have these clusterings of storms that tries to dive down here from the northwest. And then we'll have some supercells down here. So be careful if you live. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, but whatever this is, the Corpus Christi down to Brownsville. This area in the most southern region of Texas could have some tornadoes today. I could see the tornado threat increasing to a 5% risk actually, but just be aware of that. And then we get into the late evening hours and the overnight hours and could have another round of storms cruising through this region. So as far as the rest of the country, some dense fog across the Mississippi Valley and west of east of that. Red flag warnings up in North Dakota. Heck, even have some freeze watches up here in northern lower Michigan. I mean, y'all got to stop being cold up here. But flood watches up here where Vermont, Mass, Connecticut, New York all kind of come together. And here is the rest of the country as far as the Storm Prediction Center outlook. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. There is a risk of thunderstorms up here in the northern plains and in the northern Rockies. And I do think there's some thunderstorm risk that could extend a little bit further north in areas of the northeast. And then the excessive rainfall outlook. There is a couple areas to watch out for. One being down here in South Texas, 15% risk of flash flooding. And then we have a 15% risk of flash flooding across areas of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. But speaking on the Northeast today, we've already spoke on the Southeast. Just watch for more thunderstorms to develop. I think that a general risk of thunderstorms should be extended a little bit further north, and I would not be surprised one bit if we get a marginal risk up here. You see these storms developing here in central PA all the way through northern New Jersey, around the New York City points north area into southern New England. Could have some thunderstorms today, this afternoon to this evening, and then it'll kind of relax into more of just a solid rainfall. We got some rain across the mid-Atlantic for tonight. It's around 1 a.m. tonight, just more of a solid light rain. And then we'll wake up to some rainy times across the big city of New York and areas of Long Island, all of New Jersey. We could wake up to a wet, damp start across a good portion of New England, honestly, tomorrow. So, how much rainfall, though, could fall between now and 8 p.m. tomorrow? A few inches. In that red area, that's 2-3 inches of rain being possible. So, washout conditions. You guys have received a lot of rain over the last several days, and another plume of rain on the way. To really between now and the rest of the end of the work week. So the South Central U.S., just another look at a broad look at everything. We've talked about those storms dancing around in southern Texas for today. Could get some thunderstorms in New Mexico, maybe some rain showers and snow showers in the Rockies. Could get some isolated downpours this evening across Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri. But after we get into tomorrow morning, things look pretty calm. North Central U.S., pretty calm. Not a whole lot to really talk about. There is like a brick wall where these storms will not be able to get far enough north. There's a trough digging down, and this is really preventing any storm activity from getting too far north in Indiana and Ohio. So could be a rainy day across southern areas of Ohio, but northern sections of Ohio, not so much. Same thing for like Indiana and even Illinois. But definitely just calm conditions everywhere else in this region. Western U.S., pretty chill weather. Not a whole lot of anything to speak on. Some thunderstorms are possible, so even though it's not showing up much across the northern plains and the northern Rockies, but not a whole lot showing up. So temperatures, southeast, mid-Atlantic, 70s and 80s. But the northeast will be cut in half. There's a trough digging down where southern New England will get into the 60s, maybe in some 70s. And then the interior sections of New England, just 40s. I mean, chilly conditions, and it'll be a chilly day across the Great Lakes region. There is a trough digging down, as I mentioned here a second ago, but there is a surge of warmth all the way up into the Dakotas, 70s and 80s. Western U.S. is nice. A couple pockets of cool air, but for the most part, I mean, it's pretty warm. It's pretty warm. So moving ahead, the Southeast, there is another marginal risk for tomorrow. Who knows? This could uptrend to a slight risk, but this is really for areas of the Carolinas, Southeast VA, the southern half of Georgia, Southeast Alabama, and eastern and northern areas of Florida. Level 1 out of 5 risk is for some small hail, some gusty winds. We'll see if this tweaks at all, and there is a risk of some thunderstorms across Minnesota, Wisconsin, surrounding states, and the Front Range and the Rockies of Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico. And then looking at the excessive rainfall outlook for tomorrow, just a couple 5% risk areas, not a big deal. And then we'll go back to this and we'll look at day 3. Thunderstorms are possible across the Rockies, and then we can maintain a marginal risk across southern areas of Georgia, northern Florida, and just still a risk of thunderstorms. But as we get past day 3 is Saturday. I do think the risk of thunderstorms will expand north again. We'll get more marginal risk, and I'm going to talk about why now. So you see these two blobs, like this blob right here, this blue blob, this is a trough digging down. This is going to bring some cooler air. It's already going to do so today, but it's even going to dive it even further south for tomorrow. But I would really focus mainly on this feature right here. Okay, this will kind of dance around and move out the way. So this is for tomorrow. This area right here is, just remember, around lower pressure, the flow is going like this. Okay, so this is bringing in a feed of moist air from the south to the north across areas of the southeast for tomorrow. That's why you have a risk of thunderstorms and even a severe weather risk. And I do think this is also combined with a little bit of energy coming down from this area right here. Let's not get too lost in the sauce there, and let's start to get into Saturday. You notice how this feature just kind of moves in and moves on out the way, stops influencing the pattern as much as we get on down the road. But you still had this big blue blob down here, this upper low that's kind of getting trapped underneath this ridge and the warmer colors building on top of it. So it prevents this kind of cutoff area of lower pressure from really moving around too much. But eventually it will continue to, well, it'll continue to dance around. This is Sunday, okay? Sunday afternoon. I think this continues to bring thunderstorm activity up into this region, okay? Because the flow is going like that around it, okay? But the ridge is still up here. It's preventing this from really moving, okay? So as we move forward here, we start to get into Monday of next week. Still a strong ridge on top of this, but this is still trying to nudge north. Remember, any lower pressure is going to want to gain latitude. So we start to get into Monday. This is nudged back north a little bit more. And now the flow is starting to enter over more land around this. Remember, the flow is coming out the south to the north. So this is bringing in a lot of moisture around this lower pressure. So we continue. And now we're getting into Tuesday. This ridge is starting to move out of the way. Now this ridge is probably weakening this area of lower pressure, just bearing down on it. But as we start to get into next Tuesday, I really think this area, this blue area you're seeing, this upper low, is going to find, this is all the way into next Tuesday, and we're still dealing with this. It's finally going to try to move this way and weaken. But we're getting still just a solid plume of moist air around this. It's kind of coming like that, then like this. And it's just slingshotting a ton of moisture over areas of the southeast. And eventually this entire feature is probably going to move either northeast or east and continue just to bring a lot of rain and unsettled weather. And even though you're just seeing, the shade of orange up here over the northeast, I think this will bring a lot of rain up here too. So all this rain now I'm about to tell you that we're probably going to get is all responsible because is all happening because of this blob of blue that you see at the bottom of your screen that eventually is just moving around. It's just an upper low. It's bringing a lot of flow around it. So what this looks like at the surface is we're getting into tomorrow. A lot of thunderstorm activity in the green and splotches of yellow, orange, and red down here along the Gulf coastline. You got a big slug of rain. This is generated off that upper low moving down out of the north. So this is generated off this. See this feature right here for tomorrow? That thing digging down right here. So all this activity right here is from that. All this activity down here is from the blue blob to the south. Blue blob to the north is bringing this. Blue blob to the south, bringing that. I don't know why I clicked blue there. Probably because of the blue blob, right? But this could bring just a soaker into tomorrow, into the start of our weekend for the northeast. And then that moves on out the way. And then we just have to deal with this upper low down here that continues to plague our weather for the southeast and the deep south states. And even if you're not getting rain, you're probably getting a lot of cloud cover. And then we get into Monday, and this is when that upper low begins to move further north. So we're getting a big slug of moisture into Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. We're starting to get into Tuesday. This slug of moisture is moving even further north because that upper low is moving further north. And then we get into Wednesday, and it finally begins to relax somewhat, I think. But how much rain can we get between now and this time next week, 8 a.m. next Thursday, the 15th? I think this could tweak some more, but, I mean, guys, they're going for a lot of rain. All of Florida could get some much-needed rain, but once you start to get into that yellow area, that's over 4 inches of rain. So, I mean, areas of Georgia, low country of South Carolina going for 5-7 inches of rain. There's a lot of rain that could fall in these areas. And then we look a little bit further up the coastline, and just a lot of rain could follow between the upper low over the weekend, starting tomorrow, and then the upper low in the south that really moves into the picture later next week. So a lot of rain, unsettled pattern. And I do think this feature is going to bring, as it moves north right here, I think this feature is going to bring severe weather chances more than likely across this area for a few day period. Now, we could just have some marginal risk days. We could have some slight risk days, but I do think that we're going to get some severe weather days through the weekend all the way into next week because of this. That's all I got on the weather. Let's read a little bit of scripture. Let's make sure that our time is okay because, as I mentioned, I have been struggling greatly starting my videos. I don't know. It's like I start with plenty of time, but I just have a hard time getting my flow going, if you will. But let's read a little bit of scripture, but let's stop the video so I'm not distracted by the movement. Not the video, but the radar. So this morning, it's a very quick and simple passage here. We're in Psalm 94, verse 19. When I am filled with cares, your comfort brings me joy. And I think there's other forms of that says, when I am filled with anxiety, your comfort brings me joy. But worry. So when I am filled with cares, your comfort brings me joy. And I know that's pretty, I guess you would say, cut and dry, but I mean, it's the truth. I've said this many times, but we got to come to Him when we're feeling down and out, when we're worried about something. It can be small, it can be big. Personally, I am big on talking to God, really any time of the day, but especially on my way to work, on my way home from work. One of the best times to do it, I think, in my opinion, in my personal life, is when I leave my house at around 4:10, 4:15 in the morning and go up to the gym, which is about a 10-minute drive of Planet Fitness up the road. But it's so quiet. I feel like everything's still. But that's a time where I kind of, cast all my thoughts to Him. I talk to Him like He's like in my passenger seat, and it really makes me feel better. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go to Him in those times when we're feeling, that anxiety. And I feel like the word anxiety, is a word that's just used so much these days, especially by the younger generation. I'm not going to lie, guys. I didn't even know what anxiety meant when I was 15, 16 years old. But, these kids these days, they toss it around like it's just a normal thing, which is really sad. But now that I'm older, I feel it too, guys. Just random. When I feel it the most, I feel it the most on a Sunday morning. I feel like that's when Satan's trying me the most. Then, and I always overpower it. I get my butt to church, and I feel so much better. But when you're just feeling that worry, you're anxious about something, just talk to Him like He's right beside you, because He really is. Like, He's just the best friend right beside you. And I promise you, it might not be immediate, but sometimes I find like 10, 15 minutes, after I do that, it's wild. I'm like, man, I'm not really thinking about this anymore. I feel a lot better. And what I like to do is I like to picture myself a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month down the road, from the point of from feeling what I'm feeling at that moment. So, for example, if I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, worry right now, I try to picture myself a month from that moment, and then looking back at how I felt in that moment and wondering, why in the world did I worry? And sure enough, I get a month away, and I do think about when I was worrying over whatever I was worrying about. And would you know it? I had no reason to worry almost 100% of the time. So just keep that in mind, guys. Just go to Him when you're down and out. That's what it comes down to. God bless all y'all. Appreciate y'all. And we'll talk to you again soon. Stay safe with the severe weather today.